The late afternoon sun burned low over the small frontier town of Red Rock. Dust swirled along the streets and the wooden buildings cast long, trembling shadows. Daniel walked home slowly, his boots crunching on the dirt path. He had spent the day helping his mother gather supplies for the winter, but now his mind wandered. Life in Red Rock was simple, yet full of unspoken rules and old grudges. As he rounded the corner near the town square, he noticed a crowd gathering. People whispered and shouted, their voices mixing with the creaking of the wooden gallows. A strange, uneasy feeling tightened Daniel's chest. He pushed his way forward, curiosity overcoming caution. At the center of the crowd stood a figure tall and unmistakably strong. Bound by ropes and hanging slightly above the ground, the person was clearly a girl, but unlike any Daniel had ever seen. She was a giant among the townsfolk, her shoulders broad, her eyes sharp, and her presence commanding attention. She did not struggle violently. Instead, she held her head high, meeting the crowd with calm defiance. "What's she done?" Daniel asked a man standing nearby. "She's an Apache," the man spat, his face twisted with fear and prejudice. "She's accused of crimes against the town. They say she attacked travelers and raided a supply wagon." Daniel frowned. He had grown up hearing stories about conflicts between the settlers and the Apache, but he also knew that rumors often twisted the truth. He felt a strange pang of doubt. Looking at the girl, he sensed something different. Her eyes were not cruel or wild. They were steady, almost sorrowful. The sheriff stepped forward, a noose in hand, and the crowd grew silent. "This is the law," he announced. "She will hang for what she has done." Daniel's heart pounded. He had always believed in justice, but this scene did not feel just. The girl's calm bravery made it clear she deserved a chance, at least to speak her side. Something inside Daniel snapped. Without thinking, he took a deep breath and pushed through the crowd. "Stop!" he shouted. "This is wrong." The crowd gasped, and the sheriff turned sharply. Daniel's voice echoed across the square. "You don't know her story. She may not have done what you think." Before anyone could respond, Daniel climbed onto the gallows platform. The crowd muttered and shouted warnings, but he ignored them. Reaching the girl, he quickly untied the ropes around her wrists. She looked at him, her eyes wide with surprise, and for the first time a small hint of a smile appeared. "Thank you," she said softly. Her voice was low but steady, with a tone that carried strength and intelligence. Daniel offered his hand. "Come with me. I'll get you out of here." The girl hesitated. Around them, townsfolk were yelling, some readying ropes and sticks. Daniel grabbed her hand firmly. "We don't have much time," he urged. Together, they leapt down from the platform. The townsfolk gasped, but no one moved fast enough to stop them. Daniel led her through the narrow streets, past shuttered windows and startled faces, until they reached the edge of town. The girl moved with a grace that belied her size, keeping pace easily with Daniel. Finally, they reached an abandoned cabin on the outskirts of Red Rock, hidden by thick bushes and rocky terrain. Daniel opened the door and gestured inside. "You'll be safe here, for now." The girl stepped in cautiously, her eyes scanning the small cabin. She finally relaxed, leaning against the wooden wall. "I am grateful," she said. "My name is Ayana." Daniel nodded. "I'm Daniel. Don't worry. I won't let anyone hurt you while you're here." They sat across from each other, sharing a quiet moment. Daniel brought her water and some bread he had brought along. Ayana took a small piece, her fingers brushing his. There was an unspoken connection forming between them, fragile yet real, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple. Daniel noticed the bruises on Ayana's arms and legs. She had clearly been through violence before. "Who did this to you?" he asked gently. "They tried to hang me for crimes I did not commit," she replied. Her voice was calm, but there was a sharp edge of pain. "They do not understand." "They never tried to." Daniel clenched his jaw. The people in his town had long held fear and hatred for those they didn't understand, and now he could see it firsthand. "We'll figure this out," he promised. "I'll make sure you're safe until we know what to do next." Night fell, and the cabin was silent except for the crackle of the small fire Daniel had built. He couldn't help but study Ayana. She was unlike anyone he had ever met, tall, strong, and fearless, yet with a depth of emotion that made him respect her even more. He realized that rescuing her was only the beginning of a much larger story, one that would test everything he believed about loyalty, courage, and justice. Suddenly, a rustling sound outside the cabin broke the quiet. Daniel froze. Ayana's eyes sharpened and she stood towering over him. "Someone is coming," she said softly. Daniel grabbed a lantern and peered into the darkness. Shapes moved between the trees, men armed and determined. His heart raced. "We need to hide," he whispered. Ayana nodded, her expression serious. Together they moved to a hidden corner of the cabin, barely breathing. The men paused, sensing movement, but then continued past the cabin, unaware of their presence. Daniel exhaled slowly. "That was close," he murmured. Ayana gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. "You have courage, Daniel. Few would act as you did." Daniel shook his head. "I didn't do it for courage. I did it because it was the right thing to do. No one should be hanged without a chance to explain themselves." They sat by the fire, each lost in thought. Daniel could sense that Ayana carried not just physical strength, but a history filled with battles, loss, and survival. And though she remained mysterious, he felt a growing connection, a bond that was already stronger than fear, stronger than doubt. As the night deepened, Daniel realized something. This rescue was only the first step. The world outside the cabin was dangerous and protecting Ayana would not be easy. But for the first time in his life, he felt certain about one thing. He could not turn away from someone who needed help, no matter the risk. And so, as the stars shone faintly above the quiet frontier, Daniel and Ayana sat together, united by circumstance, courage, and the unspoken promise that they would face whatever came next, side by side. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the quiet hills surrounding Red Rock. Daniel woke to the soft chirping of birds and the smell of fresh earth. Outside the cabin, the town lay silent, but Daniel knew the danger had not passed. People in Red Rock were quick to anger, and news of the girl's escape could reach them at any moment. Ayana was already awake, sitting near the small window and staring at the horizon. Her long, dark hair glimmered in the morning light, and her eyes were thoughtful, almost distant. Daniel watched her for a moment before breaking the silence. "You should eat," he said gently, placing a plate of bread and dried fruit in front of her. She shook her head. "I do not need much," she replied softly. "Food is not my worry. Survival is." Daniel smiled faintly. "Then we'll make sure you survive. I won't let anyone hurt you, not while I can stop them." Ayana studied him carefully, her eyes sharp and intelligent. "You are different from most," she said finally. "Most people in this town would not risk themselves for someone like me." Daniel shrugged. "I do not see it as a choice. I see it as what is right. People should be judged by who they are, not by the stories others tell." For a while they sat in silence, listening to the wind rustling through the nearby trees. Daniel could sense Ayana's strength, not just in her size but in the way she carried herself. She had endured hardship and fear, yet her courage never wavered. He felt a deep respect growing for her, a feeling that went beyond mere friendship. Over the next few days, Daniel and Ayana established a routine. He brought her food and water, tended to her minor wounds, and helped her rest. In return, Ayana shared stories of her life, though carefully. She spoke of her village, hidden deep in the hills, and the struggles her people faced. She told of raids and battles, of families torn apart, and of the constant threat of outsiders who did not understand them. Daniel listened quietly, absorbing every detail. Each story painted a picture of a life far different from his own, a life full of courage, survival, and loss. He realized how little he truly knew about the world beyond Red Rock, and how unfairly his people had treated others out of fear and prejudice. "You've been through so much," Daniel said one evening as they sat by the small fire. "I can't imagine what it must have been like to live your life." Ayana looked at him, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "And yet here I am," she said softly. "Still standing, still fighting. That is all I can do. Life is about survival, and survival is about strength. And trust." Daniel tilted his head, curious. "Trust?" "Yes," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I do not trust easily. People have tried to harm me, to use me, or to turn me in. But you risked yourself to save me. That is rare. That is why I trust you, Daniel. He felt a warm sense of pride and responsibility. I won't betray that trust, he said quietly. I promise. The next day, Daniel taught Ayanna a few basic skills for life outside the town. He showed her how to gather edible plants, track movements quietly, and navigate the rocky terrain. Ayanna absorbed everything quickly, her strength and intelligence making her a fast learner. Daniel realized that she was not only brave but also clever, her mind as sharp as her body. Despite the growing bond between them, tension never fully disappeared. Daniel knew that bounty hunters or townsfolk could appear at any moment. He and Ayanna practiced moving quietly, hiding in the shadows and planning escape routes. Though the exercises were serious, they often ended with laughter when Ayanna, in her giant size, accidentally knocked over a stack of firewood or tripped over a low branch. One evening, while Daniel was repairing a broken window frame in the cabin, Ayanna sat quietly, sharpening a small knife she carried. Her movements were precise and calm, but Daniel noticed a shadow of sorrow in her eyes. "What are you thinking about?" he asked gently. Ayanna paused, then looked at him. "About my people," she said softly. "About the men who killed my family and the leaders who want to destroy my village. I want to protect them, but I also want to survive. I cannot do both easily." Daniel nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "You don't have to face it alone," he said firmly. "We will find a way together." Days passed and their trust deepened. Ayanna began to share more of her past, though carefully. She spoke of a man who had been the cause of much suffering for her people, a man she called her enemy. Daniel listened, feeling a mixture of anger and curiosity. He realized that Ayanna's life was far more complicated than he had imagined. One night, as a storm rumbled over the hills, Daniel and Ayanna sat close to the fire, listening to the wind howl outside. Ayanna leaned back against the wall, her head resting on her hands, and spoke quietly. "I have fought many battles," she said. "I have survived attacks and betrayals, but I never expected to be saved by someone from the enemy's land. It makes me wonder, can people change?" Daniel looked at her, his heart heavy with thought. "I believe they can," he said softly. "I believe people can choose to do right, even if it goes against everything they've been taught." Ayanna smiled faintly, a small glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Then perhaps you are different from the rest." Their moments together were filled with both learning and reflection, but also quiet joy. Daniel realized that he was not just helping Ayanna survive physically, he was also helping her regain a sense of trust in humanity, something many had tried to destroy. And Ayanna, in turn, taught Daniel lessons of courage, resilience, and the importance of questioning what he had always been told. By the end of the week, the bond between them was undeniable. They were not just protector and protected. They had become companions, united by shared experiences, respect, and the growing understanding of the dangers that awaited them beyond the cabin walls. And though neither spoke it aloud, both knew that the coming days would test that trust in ways they could not yet imagine. The story of survival, courage, and justice had only just begun. Days passed quietly at the cabin, but the calm was fragile. Daniel and Ayanna spent their time learning from each other, preparing for the dangers that lurked beyond the forest. Daniel had begun to admire Ayanna's intelligence and strength even more. She was fearless yet thoughtful, capable of planning and acting with precision, and yet behind her brave eyes he sensed a deep sadness, a story waiting to be told. One late afternoon, as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, Ayanna finally spoke more openly about her past. She had been cautious until now, but Daniel's unwavering honesty had earned her trust. "My people, we have suffered much," she began, her voice low and steady. "There are men who took everything from us, burned our villages, and captured those who tried to resist. I have fought to survive, but my true fight, my true purpose, has always been to protect what remains." Daniel listened intently. "Who did this? Who hurt your people?" Ayanna's eyes darkened. "A man of power," she said slowly. "He commands the law in the towns near our lands. He has wealth, influence. and no care for those who are weaker. He destroyed my family and now seeks to destroy my people. He is my enemy, the one I have fought for years to oppose." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. There was something in her voice, a tone that made the air heavy. He knew that her enemy was not just any man. There was a history, a weight of anger and pain that could not be ignored. "Where is he now?" Daniel asked carefully. "Near the town where you live," Ayanna said quietly, almost whispering. "He leads the men who tried to hang me. He calls himself just, but he is cruel. He will not stop until I am gone. Or my people are gone." Daniel's heart skipped a beat. The words hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. Something clicked in his mind, a terrible realization forming slowly. He swallowed hard, trying to steady himself. "Ayanna, tell me his name," he said, his voice tense but calm. She hesitated, as if weighing whether to trust him fully. Finally, she spoke. "His name is Marcus. Marcus Caldwell. He is the man responsible for everything that happened to me and my people." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. His father's name was Marcus Caldwell. The realization hit him like a stone. Ayanna's enemy, the person who had caused her so much pain, was his own father. For a moment, he could not speak. His mind raced, trying to reconcile the images of his father, the man who had raised him, taught him, protected him, with the description Ayanna had given. Could it really be true? The man he had admired all his life might be the cause of her suffering. Ayanna watched him carefully. "Daniel, are you all right?" she asked, concern in her voice. Daniel took a deep breath, forcing himself to speak. "Yes, I think I just didn't realize the truth until now." His eyes were filled with conflict. "My father, Marcus, he is the man you describe?" Ayanna nodded slowly. "Yes, he commands the towns, he enforces the law, and he believes he is always right. But he has caused great pain. He does not care who he destroys as long as he gains power." Daniel's mind was a storm of emotions. Anger, confusion, loyalty, and fear all collided inside him. He had always respected his father, trusted him to guide and protect him. But now, knowing what he had done or allowed to happen, made Daniel question everything he had been taught. "I don't know what to do," Daniel admitted finally, his voice low. "I want to protect you, Ayanna. But my father, he is my family. I don't know how to face him with this knowledge." Ayanna's expression softened. "Daniel, I understand. This is not easy. You have ties to both sides. But now that you know the truth, you must choose. Will you stand for justice, or loyalty to a man who has caused so much suffering?" Daniel looked away, staring at the trees outside the cabin. The wind rustled the leaves, carrying with it the sounds of distant towns and the faint clatter of wheels on dirt roads. Time was not on their side. He realized that staying hidden would not be enough. A confrontation was coming whether he wanted it or not. I will stand for what is right," he said finally, determination creeping into his voice. "I cannot turn away from what I know now. I will help you, Ayanna. But we must be careful. We need a plan." Ayanna nodded, relief and respect in her eyes. "We will need allies and we will need strategy. My people, they can help, but only if we act wisely. Your father, he is powerful and well-connected. We cannot confront him without preparation." Together, they began to discuss what needed to be done. They mapped out the surrounding area, noting paths for escape, possible hiding places, and towns where they could seek help. Daniel realized how much he had underestimated Ayanna's knowledge of survival. She was not just strong. She was a leader, someone who could think quickly and act decisively. That night, as the stars blinked faintly above the forest, Daniel could not sleep. His thoughts were filled with images of his father and Ayanna's stories. He felt torn, knowing that confronting his father would change everything, his family, his life, and the town he had always known. Ayanna, sensing his turmoil, sat beside him by the fire. "Daniel," she said softly, "you are not alone in this. Whatever happens, we face it together. We will protect each other and we will seek justice, not revenge, but what is fair." Daniel nodded, grateful for her words. I need to understand how my father could do these things. How could someone I trust cause so much pain?" Ayanna looked at him steadily. "People are complex, Daniel. Power can change hearts. Some men think they are right, even when they are wrong. You now have a choice. You can be different. You can do what is right, even if it is hard." He realized that her words were true. Courage was not just about fighting or surviving. It was about making the right choices, even when those choices were painful. And now, he had to decide whether he would stand for justice, knowing that doing so meant opposing the only man he had ever called father. As the fire crackled and the forest whispered outside, Daniel felt a new sense of purpose rising within him. The road ahead would be dangerous and the stakes were higher than ever. But he knew one thing for certain. He could not turn away from Ayanna. He would face the truth, confront his father, and fight for what was right. And so in the quiet cabin under the stars, Daniel and Ayanna prepared themselves for the challenges ahead, united not only by survival, but by the shared understanding that justice sometimes comes at a cost, and that cost was about to test them both in ways they could never imagine. The morning sun rose slowly over the forest, casting soft golden light through the tall pines. Daniel and Ayanna had spent the night planning. Every movement, every choice had to be careful. Daniel's mind was heavy with the truth about his father, and Ayanna's presence was a constant reminder of the danger and responsibility he now carried. "Daniel," Ayanna said quietly as they gathered supplies, "we cannot wait. The longer we stay, the greater the risk that your father will find us, and if he does, it will not end well." Daniel nodded. He had spent countless hours thinking about how to approach his father, who had unknowingly, or perhaps knowingly, become the enemy of someone Daniel had come to trust. Confronting him would not be easy. Marcus Caldwell was a man of authority, confident and proud, and he expected obedience from those around him. "I know," Daniel replied. "We must be careful. But I cannot let him continue to harm your people. He must know the truth. And I must speak to him, face to face." Ayanna's eyes narrowed slightly. "You are brave, Daniel, but bravery alone will not protect you. We need a plan." Together they prepared to leave the cabin. They packed food, water, and a few essential tools. Daniel carried a small satchel, while Ayanna's immense strength allowed her to manage heavier supplies. Every movement was deliberate, quiet, and careful. They slipped through the forest, following narrow paths and avoiding open spaces where scouts might see them. As they neared the edge of Red Rock, Daniel's heart pounded. The town lay in the distance, quiet now, but he knew it would not remain so for long. People who had been loyal to his father would be on alert, and Marcus himself was sure to be informed of Ayanna's escape. Finally, they reached the outskirts of town where a small clearing gave them a clear view of the town hall and the surrounding streets. Daniel took a deep breath. This was the moment when he would confront his father, a man he had admired all, his life now revealed as the enemy of the person he had sworn to protect. "Are you ready?" Ayanna asked softly, standing beside him. Daniel nodded. "I am." It is time he heard the truth. They approached the town hall cautiously. The building was large, imposing, and surrounded by guards. Daniel's father sat at a desk inside, reviewing documents, his face set in a stern expression. He did not see them coming at first, unaware that his son and the girl he had judged were approaching so boldly. Daniel stepped forward, his voice steady but firm. "Father." Marcus looked up, surprise flashing in his eyes. "Daniel, what are you doing here?" Daniel squared his shoulders. "I came to speak the truth about Ayanna." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "Ayanna?" he repeated, his tone sharp. "That girl is a criminal. You know the laws, you know what she has done." "She is not a criminal," Daniel said firmly. "She has been hunted and wronged by you. By your actions, you have caused suffering to her people. You have judged without knowing the truth. And now I know why. Because she is strong, and you fear what you do not control." Marcus's face turned red with anger. "Do not speak to me like that, Daniel. I am your father. I have led this town, enforced the law, and protected our people. You will not accuse me of wrongdoing." Daniel met his father's gaze without flinching. "I am accusing you, Father. You have caused pain and destruction, and I will not stand by while it continues. Ayanna is not your enemy. You are hers, because of your choices. I cannot follow you blindly anymore. I will do what is right." For a long moment, Marcus stared at his son, the weight of the words sinking in. The room was silent except for the ticking of a clock and the distant sounds of town life outside. Daniel could feel the tension in the air, heavy and thick, as if the walls themselves held their breath. "You dare to accuse me in my own house?" Marcus finally shouted, slamming a hand on the desk. "Do you know what this could mean? You betray your family." "I am not betraying my family," Daniel said calmly. "I am standing for justice, for what is right, and I will not let fear of you stop me." Ayanna stepped forward, her towering figure filling the doorway. "Marcus Caldwell," she said, her voice steady. "You have caused suffering to my people. You have burned our villages and hunted those who resisted. You judged me without knowing the truth. Your actions have made you my enemy." Marcus froze. He studied her, recognizing the strength and intelligence in her eyes, the determination that Daniel had spoken of. For the first time, he did not feel in control. He felt the weight of accountability pressing down on him, and it was uncomfortable, unfamiliar. Daniel spoke again. "Father, listen. She is not the enemy. You have been blinded by power and fear, but I will not be blind anymore. We can find a way to make this right, to correct the wrongs you have done, but only if you choose to act with fairness, not pride." Marcus's hands trembled slightly. He leaned back in his chair, his face a mixture of anger, shock, and confusion. He had spent years believing he was always right, that authority and law were his shields. But now, confronted by the truth, and the courage of his son and Ayanna, he could not deny the reality before him. I have tried to protect this town," he said slowly, his voice lower. "I did what I thought was necessary. I did not know." Daniel shook his head gently. "You did not know because you refused to see. You judged without listening, without understanding. But now you know, and now you can choose." Ayanna stepped closer. "You cannot undo the past, Marcus, but you can stop causing harm. You can allow me to protect my people, and you can make amends where possible. That is the right path. Not pride, not fear, justice." The room was silent once more. Marcus sank back in his chair, the weight of his decisions pressing heavily on him. Daniel and Ayanna watched him, knowing this was a turning point. For better or worse, the confrontation had begun. The choice now lay with Marcus, whether to continue on a path of fear and control or to face the truth and act with fairness. Daniel felt a mixture of relief and tension. The confrontation was not over, but at least the truth had been spoken. At least his father had heard it. The next steps would be difficult and the consequences uncertain, but Daniel knew one thing: he had chosen to stand for justice, and he would not turn back, no matter the cost. Ayanna, sensing Daniel's inner turmoil, placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did the right thing," she said softly. "Now we wait and see what he chooses." Together they stood in the room, facing Marcus Caldwell, knowing that the decisions made in the coming hours would change their lives forever. The confrontation had begun, and there was no turning back. The morning after the confrontation was quiet but heavy with tension. Marcus Caldwell sat in his study, staring at the desk before him, his hands folded tightly. Daniel and Ayanna had left the room after speaking their truths, leaving him to reflect on the words he had heard. The sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the dust particles dancing in the air. Yet the light did little to ease the weight in his chest. Daniel and Ayanna waited outside, near the edge of the forest. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and earth. Daniel's heart was restless. He did not know how his father would respond. The confrontation had planted seeds of doubt and understanding, but Marcus was a man used to power, and changing a lifetime of belief was never easy. After what seemed like hours, Marcus stepped outside. His face was stern, but his eyes held a trace of something new, humility perhaps, or recognition of the truth. He took a deep breath, and his voice, though firm, carried an unusual softness. "Daniel, Ayanna," he began, "I have listened to what you said. I cannot deny the suffering caused. I cannot undo the past, but I can choose a different path now. I will not interfere with your people, Ayanna. I will allow you to protect them, and I will attempt to repair what I have broken." Ayana's eyes widened slightly, a mix of surprise and relief. "Thank you," she said quietly. "This is a start. It may take time, but your choice matters. It will save lives, including those who still look to you for guidance." Daniel stepped closer to his father. "I know this is not easy, Father, but it is the right thing to do. I hope this is the beginning of understanding, not just for you, but for the town as well." Marcus nodded slowly. "I will try, Daniel. I will try to do better. You have taught me a lesson I needed to learn. Perhaps I was blind, but I can open my eyes now." With that, a quiet agreement passed between them, unspoken but understood. The tension that had weighed so heavily for days lifted slightly, replaced by cautious hope. Daniel looked at Ayana, who nodded subtly, acknowledging the progress made. Over the next few weeks, life began to change. Marcus took deliberate steps to correct the injustices caused by his actions. He instructed his men to stop pursuing Ayana and her people. Town leaders and settlers were guided toward understanding, learning to respect the rights and dignity of the Apache. Though change was slow and sometimes met with resistance, Daniel could see the first signs of a community beginning to heal. Ayana, meanwhile, returned to her people, leading them with courage and wisdom. Daniel accompanied her part way, helping to ensure her safe passage and offering guidance from his knowledge of the surrounding lands. She had regained not only her freedom but also a renewed sense of hope for her people's future. Before parting, Ayana turned to Daniel. "Thank you for your courage," she said softly. "You risked everything for what is right. You have given me and my people a chance to survive. That is something I will never forget." Daniel smiled, feeling a warmth he had not experienced before. It was the right thing to do. I couldn't stand by and do nothing. I am glad we faced this together. They embraced briefly, a gesture of friendship, respect, and shared trials. Then, with a final nod, Ayana walked toward the path leading to her village, her figure strong and confident against the morning light. Daniel watched her go, knowing that this was not the end of her journey nor his own, but that they had made a difference together. Returning to the town, Daniel noticed subtle changes. People spoke with more respect for Ayana's people. Children played together in the fields without fear. Leaders who once judged harshly now listened to voices they had ignored. Daniel's heart swelled with quiet pride. The town was far from perfect, but it was beginning to learn the value of justice, compassion, and courage. Daniel also reflected on his relationship with his father. Though Marcus had admitted his wrongs, Daniel knew the road ahead would be long. Trust had to be rebuilt and understanding earned. Yet for the first time, Daniel felt a sense of hope. His father had chosen to change, and that choice was a beginning, a chance for redemption. At night, Daniel often sat beneath the stars, thinking of Ayana and the lessons she had taught him. Courage was more than facing danger. It was about standing for what was right, even when it meant confronting those you love. Justice was not always easy, but it was necessary. And trust, once given, could create bonds strong enough to overcome fear and prejudice. As the months passed, Daniel continued to work toward fairness and understanding in Red Rock. He guided his father, helped the town learn from past mistakes, and remained a friend to Ayana whenever possible. Though their paths were different, the connection they shared remained unbroken, a reminder that courage and compassion could unite even the most unlikely allies. In the end, Daniel understood that life was full of difficult choices, but it was the choices we make that define us. He had chosen courage over fear, justice over blind loyalty, and compassion over prejudice. And in doing so, he had changed not only his life but the lives of many others. The story of Daniel and Ayana became a quiet legend in Red Rock, a tale of bravery, trust, and the power of doing what is right. And though challenges remained, the lessons learned would echo for generations. That true courage is acting with integrity, that justice requires effort and sacrifice, and that bonds forged in trust can overcome even the deepest divides. And so, under the endless sky of the frontier, Daniel looked toward the horizon, thinking of Ayana, his father, and the journey they had shared. The sun rose once more, warm and golden, a promise of new beginnings and hope for the future.